Action. Good morning or good afternoon. Today we'll be recording a video on 710. This is actually a compilation of like 3 or 4 different Quizettes, all packed into one. Not all questions are going to be exactly the same, especially Monday and Tuesday. They look very different from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So make sure you're understanding the question because they're not all the same question. Write your last name, comma, first name, today's date, and you could circle your class color. So number 1 says, does the table show a proportional relationship? If so, what is the equation using r as a constant of proportionality, y equals rx? A calculator is allowed. So go ahead and circle or underline proportional relationship. And then constant of proportionality. Another word for constant of proportionality is an 8th grade key term, which is called slope. Another way that you can translate constant of proportionality is unit rate. Unit rate. Unit rate. Go ahead and write that on your Quizzette. If it's too small for you, I'm going to zoom it in just a little more. So unit rate and slope. Okay. So if you're ever given a graph and it's asking you about unit rate, constant of proportionality, or proportionality, what else? Equivalent ratios. Basically, if they give you a graph and they're asking you if the terms compare to one another, you have to write the ratios from y to x. So y to x. So that's why I wrote the first ratio, 37.5 or 3750 over 50. My next ratio would be 75 over 100. My next ratio would be 90 to 120. And then 131.25 to 175. Okay, so the first thing is that it's asking you, is this table proportional? In order for you to find out if the table is proportional, you have to see if they all equal to the same number. If they all equal to the same number, that means they have the same unit rate, the same constant slope, and the same constant of proportionality. So what I would do is I would divide 3750 divided by 50, and I would actually find that that's 0.75. That represents my unit rate, it represents my slope, and it represents my constant of proportionality. Yes, I want you to write it because it's something that you're going to see constantly. Constant of proportionality. They all mean the same thing, but unit rate is more used in 7th grade. In 8th grade, you'll see the word slope a lot more. Constant and proportionality, you'll see in both. It's just important to know that they're all equivalent. They're all applied differently. That's why we have 3 different versions of it. Okay, now 75 over 100. Some of you might know that's just 75 hundredths. That's going to be equivalent to 0.75. You can also double check in a calculator, and I have a calculator right next to me. You guys can't see it on the screen, but I'm double checking, and it is in fact 0.75. Now 90 over 120, 90 divided by 120 is also 0.75. So it checks out. And the last one, and I know some of you guys might think, oh, it's just going to be 0.75 and it's easy to assume, but you actually do have to double check it because on SBAC and on questions like this, they're going to want you to check every single one. It's not going to be, don't assume that each one is equal to the same thing. You do have to check each one. So 131.25 divided by 175 is in fact 0.75. Okay, so just by looking at our unit rate is right here. Taking our y in comparison to our x, they're all equivalent, so this table is proportional because they're all equal to the same unit rate. So we would say just automatically this table is proportional. So you'll write this table is proportional because let me see, all the ratios are equivalent. Or all the unit rates are equivalent. All the ratios, or I'll just say all the ratios are equivalent. All right, the second part says, If so if that is proportional, that means it is, what is the equation using R as the constant proportionality and y equals Rx? So this is probably the easiest part. You just have to pay attention. So the equation is y equals Rx. Instead of writing R, you write your constant of proportionality. And your constant of proportionality is 0.75. So you would write this equation. I'm going to write it in purple. Y equals 0.75 x. That's my equation. And that actually makes a lot of sense because let's say, for example, they're asking you about how many, let's say that this X represents tickets, and let's say this Y represents sales. Let's say it's asking like the Hollywood Bowl, for instance. The Hollywood Bowl has so many seats, so many tickets to sell. Let's just assume that they only have 1,000 tickets that they want to sell for this event. So 1,000 tickets, okay? If you want to find out what the price is, you're going to substitute 1,000 where X is in our equation. So you don't have to write this down. I just want to give you an example. So Y equals 0.75 X, which is, in our case, 1,000. We multiply that out, and we figure out that that's 750. So if the Hollywood Bowl was selling a ticket for 75 cents each, and they sold 1,000 tickets, it would end up being $750 right here. So the equation is meant to help you find bigger portions in the future. That's the whole point of that. Number 2, it says, cooking at a cafe, the cook uses a recipe that calls for eggs and milk. The amount of eggs and milk has a proportional relationship. Now that is a key term, so make sure you underline it. And it's already telling you that the table is proportional. Complete the ratio table. So your milk is, so right here the ratio is written milk to eggs. So this is Y to X. So Y to X. So my first ratio is 6 over 2. My next ratio, I don't know what this blank is, but I know it's in terms of Y. So I could say that this is Y over 3. And then my next ratio is 12 to this blank, and this blank is going to be an X. So 12 over X. Now maybe you've learned about cross multiplication. You can find the blanks of Y and the blank of X by simple math, or you can use proportionality, or you can use equivalent ratio. All right, so I'm going to teach you how to solve this using proportions. If you look here at the last one, you can cross multiply if you have an equal sign between fractions. 12 times 1 is 12. 3 times x is 3x. So you set that equal to 3x. 3 times this mystery number is 12, or you can just divide both sides by 3. And then you would get x equals 4. X equals 4. So this blank would be 4. Another way you can think about this is 6 times something gets me 2. Or 6 divided by something gets me 2. I'm sorry, divided by a number. 6 divided by 3 gets me 2. So 12 divided by 3 also gets me that 4. Y is a number divided by 3. So you can do the inverse operation and go the inverse way, and you do the opposite way. So 3 times 3 is 9, so you would know y is equal to 9. Another way to find y is equal to 9 is just set this equal to the ratio. And the ratio is 3 over 1. So you would multiply 3 times 3, and that's 9. Y times 1 is just 1y, but you don't write 1y, you just write y. So that's a way that you can prove that that blank is actually y equals 9. Then you can just simplify 6 over 2, and that's just 3 over 1. So that's 1 cup of milk for every 1 piece or 1 egg for this recipe. So some of you solved this. You could have just solved this table right here at number 2 just by trying to find a pattern. Some of you guys could tell that 3 is either going to be multiplied or divided. Just make sure that the pattern is consistent with each blank. Number 3, ask, a baker likes to make cookies. It's pretty shocking, right? The graph shows a proportional relationship, so it's already telling you that it's proportional, between cups of flour and the number of cookies made. What does a 0.00 represent? So first of all, if you ever get a question that looks like this right here, like this, if it doesn't start at the origin, it's not proportional. It always has to start at the origin. You can write that, not proportional, or you can abbreviate not propor or whatnot. Just put no P, not proportional. Another thing is if, like, let's say it starts at the origin, but it curves like this. If it's not a straight line, it's also not proportional. And what's another scenario? I think those are the only scenarios. It has to be a straight line, and it has to go through 0, 0, and that's when you know it's proportional. And the example they gave us, I'm going to write it in blue, is a proportional graph, because that is a straight line through the origin. That is a straight line through the origin. So 0, 0 represents 0, 0 represents 0 cups of flour. Oh, that's really sloppy. Let me rewrite that. 0 cups of flour for 0 cookies. Now I'm going to write in purple. Go ahead and write a box or just like a section. I want you to put a point at 7 and what is this? 125. So point 7, 125 represents, here we go. I'm a mess. There's the eraser. The 7 represents 7 cups of flour. And 125 cookies. If we were to divide the ratio, which would be 125 over 7, that would tell us the unit rate. All right, so let's say I did 125 divided by 7. That's 17.86 rounded up. So 17.86 rounded up. So that's my unit rate. 17.86 is my unit rate. So that means for every cup of flour, I have about 17 or 18 cookies. It's an estimation because it can't be exact sometimes. So as far as like the 7th grade content, you're always going to have a unit rate that is a whole number or a decimal that has like 0.5 at the end of it. If you're in 8th grade, your unit rates can vary, and your unit rates can be a decimal that's not as pretty, like the one I just found, 17.86. That's the main difference between 7th and 8th grade. And then I already told you that in 8th grade, you see the word slope a lot more. You don't see unit rate as much. If you have any questions, make sure to raise your hand. And just remember that every question is different on this Quizzette, so don't try to do the same thing every day.